What if I told you that Isaiah foresaw the rise of technology, and that what we call progress today he called idolatry? It seems unlikely, doesn't it? But when we look closely at this prophet's words, written nearly 2,700 years ago, it's as if he were describing the exact behavior of modern humanity, a people who worship the work of their own hands. And the most striking thing is that in Isaiah's time, the most advanced technology was a sword or a stone statue. Yet he envisioned something much greater, a time when man would bow before his own creation, believing he could control everything. Isaiah's prophecy is not just a religious warning. It is a psychological and spiritual portrait of humanity when it strays from the divine essence. He wrote, "Man has filled himself with idols. He worships the work of his hands, the work of his fingers." Today, this phrase almost sounds like a modern headline. Think of the screens that hypnotize us every day, the algorithms that decide what we see, buy, and even what we believe. 21st century man may never have prostrated himself before a statue, but he spends hours kneeling, not before stone, but before glass and light. The question Isaiah asked in his time continues to echo today. Where is the line between what we create and what we begin to worship? When man places more faith in the machine than in the Creator, more trust in the system than in the soul, something within him is lost. And this is the most subtle point, because the new idolatry is not explicit. It is silent. It doesn't demand incense, only attention. It doesn't ask for sacrifices, only time. And the more time we give it, the more it grows. Have you ever stopped to think about how much of your life depends on technology? From the moment you wake up until the moment you go to sleep, everything revolves around it. Our routines, decisions, relationships, and even the way we perceive the world. What Isaiah called the work of hands now has a voice, responds, guides, and even moves. Artificial intelligence, digital networks, and technological control are the new deities of a world that believes it has replaced God with efficiency. But has all this advancement truly liberated us, or simply enslaved us to a new form of worship? Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover may surprise you. Isaiah wasn't just talking about ancient statues. He was talking about the human heart, about the eternal desire to create something that makes us feel in control. The same desire that drove civilizations to build temples now builds towers of data. The same impulse that made humans carve stone gods now drives them to program intelligences that promise omniscience. It's a repeat of the same mistake in a new guise. The curious thing is that Isaiah wasn't condemning creation. He was warning about pride. The problem was never advancement, but worship. Humanity was created to develop, invent, and transform the world, but not to bow down to what it creates. And that's exactly what we see today, a humanity enchanted by its own work, lost between the divine and the digital, believing it can transcend its own limits without realizing it's moving away from what makes it human. Isaiah foresaw that humanity would forget the Creator while admiring its own creation. And perhaps this is the most timely prophecy of all, because it speaks to us, to the generation that believes technology is the answer to everything, a people who feel enlightened, but live surrounded by artificial light. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic, because when Isaiah spoke about idols, he wasn't just describing objects, but mindsets. And understanding this completely changes how we view our time and the choices we're making without realizing it. Isaiah saw the human heart with a clarity that still troubles us. He knew that the greatest danger lay not in the objects themselves, but in the attachment humans create to what they build. And somehow, it's impossible not to recognize oneself in this prophecy. How often do we find ourselves more connected to a screen than to a real conversation? How often do we seek answers in a machine, when what we really need is silence and discernment? It's as if with each advancement, humanity moves a little further away from its own essence, And that's precisely why Isaiah's words continue to resonate so powerfully. And if this topic touches you in any way, if at any point in these words you found yourself reflecting on your own relationship with technology and faith, leave your thoughts in the comments below. I want to know how this prophecy resonates with you, what it makes you feel and think. Each comment is part of this conversation, and it's through them that this message spreads and reaches more people who may never have stopped to think about it. And if you believe this kind of reflection is important, that the world needs to hear more about what the prophets truly wanted to show us, please leave a like. This helps YouTube understand the value of this content and allows it to reach others who are also seeking spiritual answers amidst so much modern confusion. And if you're new here, if you've just arrived and felt that this topic speaks directly to your soul, subscribe to the channel. Here we talk about prophecies, the connection between faith and technology, and what's happening in the world in light of spirituality. Your subscription is what keeps this work alive and allows it to reach hearts that need to hear this message. Because ultimately, what we're building here is more than a channel. It's a community of awakened people who don't just want to watch, but to understand the times they live in. And Isaiah, if he could see all this, might smile. Because what he saw back then, we're beginning to understand now. And there's something much deeper in this prophecy. Something that completely changes the way we see what's happening around us. Isaiah lived in one of the most turbulent periods in Israel's history. A time of divided kingdoms, fragile political alliances, fear, and pride. He was an ordinary man with an extraordinary mission, to be the voice of God among a people who had forgotten the sound of the sacred. As the world around him became increasingly obsessed with power, wealth, and appearances, Isaiah saw something others couldn't, the human soul distancing itself from its creator. Jerusalem, the city that should have been the spiritual heart of the nation, was filling with idols and altars erected to human vanity. And it is in this context that Isaiah emerges, not as a moralist, but as a messenger. He spoke not with anger, but with pain, because he saw the people worshiping what they created and forgetting the one who had created them. Isaiah was not a distant or cold prophet. He deeply felt the reality he denounced. When he said, "Man worships the work of his own hands," it was not just a religious critique, but a spiritual diagnosis. He was describing the same cycle that has accompanied humanity since the beginning. Creation rebelling against the Creator, believing it could exist without Him. And in a way, this is one of the most uncomfortable truths in history. Man always ends up worshiping a reflection of himself. In Isaiah's time, this reflection took the form of statues, sculptures, and altars. Today, it takes the form of screens, algorithms, and machines that learn and think like us. But there's something curious about the way Isaiah conveyed his message. He didn't just point out the error, he revealed the spiritual impact behind it. For Isaiah, the danger wasn't just physical, but internal. Every time man placed his faith in something created, a part of his spiritual essence weakened. It was as if he were exchanging the living presence of God for an inanimate image, something that imitates life but doesn't possess it. And when we stop to observe the world today, we realize how frighteningly accurate this vision is. Because deep down, we continue to make the same exchange, replacing the spiritual with the functional, the eternal with the immediate, the divine with the digital. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because the story of Isaiah isn't just about a prophet from the past, it's about the human mindset that spans the centuries. The prophet lived in an era when people believed that political success and military alliances could guarantee security. Today, we believe that technological progress and science can save us from everything. It's the same quest for power and control, just with new names. Humans continue to believe they can create something so perfect that it makes them independent of the Creator. And just as Isaiah warned the people about the danger of trusting in sculptures, today we could hear his voice echoing among the digital noise, saying, "You are placing your faith in systems that have no soul." Isaiah had an impressive sensitivity to the human heart. He saw beyond appearances. He knew that idolatry wasn't just bending the knee to an object, but placing one's heart in anything that takes the place of God. This could be power, status, money, or, in our time, technology. The difference is that today, idols aren't in temples, they're in pockets. They're always lit, always within reach, and the more people consult them, the more dependent they become. Isaiah saw this with prophetic clarity. A people guided by their own creations would eventually be controlled by them. There's something profoundly human about this cycle. Man creates to dominate, but ends up being dominated. He builds to have freedom, but becomes a prisoner of what he's built. And the most tragic thing is that he doesn't realize it. Just as the people of Israel believed their statues protected them, today we believe our machines liberate us. But the hidden truth is that each advancement makes us a little more vulnerable, not in body, but in spirit. Isaiah was trying to warn about this silent loss, the loss of discernment, the ability to recognize what is true and what is merely imitation. And perhaps this is the great revelation behind his prophecy. He wasn't just criticizing religious behavior, but describing a transformation of mentality, the transition from a spiritual people to a pragmatic one who trusts more in what they see than in what they feel. Isaiah understood that this kind of worship was not only a mistake, it was a dangerous substitution. Man exchanging the invisible and eternal for something tangible but empty. Looking at the modern world, it's hard not to see this prophecy repeating itself. Isaiah's ancient words fit perfectly with today's headlines. He spoke of statues erected by vanity. We speak of networks erected by ego. He warned of human pride. We celebrate the power of the human mind as if it were divine. All that has changed is the language. The essence remains the same. And perhaps the greatest sign that Isaiah was right is that humanity still believes it can create something that will make it eternal. Isaiah's story mirrors our own, and with every line he writes, it's as if we hear a call to conscience. A reminder that no matter how brilliant human creation may be, it can never replace the Creator. And if there's one thing modern technology should teach us, it's precisely this. The more we advance, the more we need wisdom to avoid losing what makes us human. If this passage made you think about how the past and present connect in such mysterious ways, write the word in the comments conscience, because it is from there that everything begins, and it is exactly there that Isaiah tried to rekindle in his time. Isaiah wrote, "They are filled with idols. They worship the work of their hands, the work of their fingers." A short, simple sentence, yet one that carries immense weight. Each word is like an arrow piercing time. When he wrote this, he spoke of a people surrounded by images carved in stone, gold, and wood, objects created to represent power, security, and divinity. But, almost unbelievably, what Isaiah described more than 2 millennia ago seems an accurate portrayal of our own time. Mankind remains full of idols, only now they shine on glass screens and are programmed in silicon. The prophecy isn't in the past, it has simply changed form. Isaiah saw people who believed they controlled their gods because they were the work of their own hands. And this is the irony of history. Man has always believed he could create something superior to himself, something that would make him more powerful, more independent. The problem is that the more he tries to dominate the world with his own hands, the further he moves away from what truly sustains him. It's as if the prophet were saying, "You are placing too much faith in creations and forgetting the Creator." And this warning rings more relevant than ever. We live in an age where everything that exists, from the information we receive to the dreams we cultivate, is made by human hands. A system, a machine, a network, and yet we call this freedom. The most curious thing is how this modern worship disguises itself. No one today sees themselves as an idolater. But just observe how much the world revolves around technology. People wake up, and the first thing they do is look at a screen. They seek in it the meaning of the day, the mood, the direction. They seek approval, comfort, and even companionship. Isaiah spoke of mute idols who could not speak. We have created idols that speak, respond, and, in a way, even know us. Idols that understand our desires, our emotions, and return to us a version of ourselves. And this is where the prophecy takes on new depth, because idolatry is no longer just about what man worships, but about what he becomes by worshiping. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because Isaiah's verse is not just a moral denunciation, it is a revelation about human nature. It shows how much man tends to lose himself within his own creations. When Isaiah says, "They worship the work of his hands," he is talking about the inversion of the spiritual order, the moment when the Creator bows before the creature. It is the exact point where wisdom turns into pride. And if we look at the present, we will see that this inversion repeats itself almost perfectly. Man, fascinated by technological advancement, begins to believe that he no longer needs God. And this thought, as old as humanity, is what Isaiah was trying to warn us against. Technology itself is not the problem, just as the stone sculptures were not the true focus of the prophecy. The danger lies in the meaning we give them. It lies in the blind trust we place in something soulless. Isaiah saw this happening before his eyes, a people replacing the invisible and eternal with something tangible and immediate. Today, we do the same, only with a different kind of matter, chips, processors, global networks. Our fingers create what we venerate. Our hands shape what we believe can save us. And when everything revolves around human work, the divine becomes obsolete. Isaiah was right when he said that men have filled themselves with idols. Look around. The world is full of them. They are countless, omnipresent, and seductive. They are in pockets, on desks, in offices, in schools, in churches. They are small, but they hold power over millions. Every click, every glance, every touch is a modern form of worship. It is as if man has finally created the God he always wanted, a God who obeys him, who responds, who adapts to his desires. But in return, this invisible God silently demands something: time, attention, and, little by little, control over the heart. Isaiah spoke of a people who became like their idols, and this is perhaps the most profound aspect of his prophecy, because what we worship transforms us. The man who kneels before something dead gradually loses the life within himself. The man who worships the machine becomes the machine. When everything around us is digital, cold, and programmable, we begin to distance ourselves from what is natural, human, and spiritual. And what was once a simple object now becomes a mirror. The power of this verse lies in its simplicity. Isaiah didn't describe a historical event, but a recurring behavior. He saw the future because he understood the human heart, and that heart, even today, remains the same: restless, dissatisfied, trying to fill the void with anything but the divine. What changes are the forms, the languages, the tools. The spirit of idolatry, however, remains. If this reflection awakened something in you, if at any moment you recognized yourself in the words of Isaiah or felt the weight of this connection between the ancient and the modern, write here in the comments the word reflection. Because deep down, each of us needs to ask ourselves, what do I see when I look at the work of my hands? Creation or mirror? Idolatry never disappeared. It simply changed its setting. Before, people knelt before stone statues in temples filled with smoke and rituals. Today, they bow before screens, silently, giving their time and attention without realizing it. The altar has changed, but the devotion remains the same. And perhaps this is the most disturbing part of this entire transformation. Modern idolatry no longer needs religion, nor named gods. It only needs our constant presence. But the essence is the same: the surrender of the soul to something that has no life of its own. It's curious how humanity has exchanged the sacred for the synthetic without even realizing it. Before, people molded stone idols, believing that power resided within them. Now we mold algorithms, systems, and intelligences that seem to think, and we also believe that power resides within them. Only this time, the power is real. It observes us, influences us, and, little by little, molds us back. Creation has come to control the Creator. Modern idolatry is silent, comfortable, and precisely for that reason, dangerous. It doesn't demand sacrifices of blood, but sacrifices of time. Man doesn't realize he's bowing down because there's no physical altar, just a glowing screen. And that's the genius of the new idolatry. It happens invisibly. Every notification is a call to worship. Every click is a small offering. And the digital altar is always active, open 24 hours a day. Isaiah spoke of idols made by human hands. Today, these idols are connected by billions of hands simultaneously. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because this shift in the form of idolatry reveals something about the mindset of our time. Man no longer seeks merely to dominate the world. He wants to dominate the meaning of existence itself. And when he doesn't find answers in the invisible, he tries to produce them in the visible. The problem is that in doing so, he begins to replace faith with control, spirituality with technology, transcendence with data. Modern idolatry is not an escape from God. It is an attempt to recreate God in the image of man. With every technological advancement comes the promise of salvation. Cures for diseases, extended lifespans, intelligence that surpasses human limits, all of this sounds like redemption. But there's a difference between progress and purpose. Technology evolves, but the human heart remains empty. And while humanity believes it is ascending, in reality, it is losing itself within its own creations. Isaiah warned that people were filled with idols, and today we are filled with information, images, and stimuli. We are surrounded by everything except silence, and silence is the place where God speaks. The impact of this is immense. People are increasingly connected, but also more lonely. They have access to all knowledge, but feel a void that knowledge cannot fill. It's the paradox of the modern age. The more humanity strives for self-sufficiency, the more dependent it becomes. Isaiah saw this clearly in his time, a people who trusted their political alliances and their own hands more than the Creator. Today, we do the same, only with chips and connections. And that's why Isaiah's prophecy is so powerful, because it speaks not only of ancient images, but of the soul of a world it believes is enlightened. The altar has changed, but the devotion remains the same. This phrase sums up the heart of our age. Modern idolatry is the worship of reflection, of man himself, of his ideas, of his progress. And the more we admire what we create, the more we forget who truly created us. The hidden truth behind all this is that the problem was never advancement, but oblivion. Technology is a tool. Idolatry is a choice. What Isaiah tried to show us is that every time man replaces spirituality with the power of his hands, he loses something essential, the connection with the invisible. And when that connection is broken, all that remains is image, shine, form, appearance, a world full of movement, but empty of meaning. Modern man believes he is in control, but in reality, he is being shaped by his own creations. Technology is no longer just a tool. It is a mirror that reflects the human heart, and the more we gaze into it, the more we become like what we see. Isaiah had already realized this long before. Man becomes like that which he worships. And perhaps this is the most frightening part of the prophecy, realizing that we are being transformed by the very things we created to serve us. If this excerpt made you reflect on what really occupies the center of your life, write the word in the comments mirror, because sometimes it is before him that the deepest truth is revealed. Technology has become the new god of the digital age. It is everywhere, invisible yet omnipresent. It listens, speaks, responds, observes, and even guides. People trust it as if it were an infallible force, a modern oracle capable of solving any problem. And the most impressive thing is how this trust has taken hold naturally, almost unconsciously. Today, if something happens, the first reaction isn't to pray, it's to look to the system for an answer. Artificial intelligence already writes, decides, recommends, and, for many, even seems to understand. Isaiah spoke of men worshiping the work of their own hands. And now, more than ever, man kneels before what he has created and calls it progress. But to what extent has creation surpassed the Creator? This is the question that echoes in the silence of restless minds. Man has always wanted to be master of his own destiny, and now he believes he has finally achieved it. But in trying to be the god of the modern world, he becomes a servant of what he has built. Each new invention, each new technological breakthrough seems to bring him closer to perfection, but also distances him from his essence. Isaiah saw this before anyone else. The moment when man would lose himself within his own power. Technology is fascinating because it promises everything humanity has ever wanted: knowledge, control, and eternity. But there's a difference between promise and purpose. When we look at people's behavior today, we realize that this new digital faith has replaced the sacred. It offers a kind of instant redemption. The app cures boredom. The algorithm shows the way. The machine brings the answer. Everything is immediate, efficient, and without mystery. But mystery is precisely where God dwells. And by eliminating mystery, humanity also erases the space for faith. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject. Because what's happening isn't just a technological revolution, it's a silent, spiritual transformation. Technology occupies the space previously reserved for transcendence. It creates the illusion that we can overcome human limits, aging, making mistakes, dying. It presents itself as the new path to salvation, a kind of digital paradise where anything is possible. But the question almost no one asks is, at what cost? What do we lose by placing our complete trust in that which has no soul? Modern man lives surrounded by artificial voices, but rarely listens to his own conscience. He communicates with the entire world, but disconnects from himself. The constant din of notifications has become the new daily prayer. The touch of screens has replaced the touch of presence. With each technological advancement, we gain efficiency but lose depth. We are more informed, but less wise. Isaiah warned about this when he said that the people worshipped the work of their hands, not because it was evil, but because it became the center of everything. Faith in the system is a reflection of lost faith in the invisible. People trust more in what they can measure, calculate, and simulate than in what they feel. And it is precisely at this point that the prophet seemed to see beyond time. He knew that the greatest danger was not progress itself, but the loss of purpose. When man stops seeing God as creator and begins to see himself as the creator of all, he inverts the order of things. And this inversion has a price, the same price the world pays now, the absence of the spiritual. Behind the scenes of this digital age, a mindset shift is taking place. Humanity doesn't just use technology, it worships it. And this modern cult is subtle. We believe we depend on it only to work or live better, but in practice, it has become an extension of our identity. Isaiah saw something similar in his time, a people who placed their hope in gods who could not save. Today, we do the same. But our gods are made of code, not stone. What makes this prophecy so powerful is that it speaks not of destruction, but of revelation. It reveals the point at which man loses himself within his own reflection. And it is in this digital mirror that many have ceased to recognize the human face. Technology should be a tool, but it has become a mirror. And the more we look at it, the more we forget who we truly are. Isaiah didn't see machines, but he saw the human heart, and he understood that when man worships himself, the result is always the same: emptiness. The new God of the digital age promises light, but offers only reflection. He shines, but does not illuminate. He speaks, but does not listen. He connects, but does not understand. And while humanity worships him, what truly fades is the spiritual spark that makes him different from everything he has ever created. Isaiah knew this. He saw the future and understood that humanity's greatest danger would not be war, nor famine, but oblivion, the forgetting of the sacred amidst the abundance of one's own intelligence. If this excerpt made you reflect on the extent to which we trust what we create, write the word in the comments essence. Because in the end, it is she, and she alone, who can remind us who we are when everything around us starts to seem too divine. The real problem was never technology. It was the spirit that drives it. What lies behind human creation is not always curiosity or progress. It is often pride. The same pride that Isaiah saw in the hearts of his people when they believed they could fashion their own gods and determine the course of their own history. The same pride that, centuries before, led men to unite to build the Tower of Babel, a monument to human self-sufficiency, an attempt to reach heaven without needing God. And what was the Tower of Babel if not the first great symbol of the idolatry of the human mind? The belief that man can be equal to the Creator. Today, that tower has been rebuilt, not with bricks and mortar, but with data, cables, and codes. The Internet is the new Babel, uniting the entire world under a single digital language. And just as in the ancient biblical narrative, this union is not without consequences. Man believes he is connecting the planet, but what he is really doing is trying to centralize power and knowledge. He wants to reach the top again, look up, and say, "We don't need God anymore." Isaiah would see in this behavior the same spirit that led his people to idolatry, arrogance disguised as progress. Creaturely pride is the most subtle of deceptions. It begins with a simple idea: I can. Then it morphs into, I can do it without God. And finally, it becomes, I am like God. This sequence is ancient, but it repeats itself in a frighteningly modern way. When humans create machines that think, they see themselves as creators of life. When they develop artificial intelligences that mimic human emotions, they convince themselves they have achieved something divine. But deep down, it is the same impulse that has led humanity to its downfall from the beginning, the desire to replace the divine with creation itself. Isaiah warned that man worships what he makes with his own hands, but what he was perhaps trying to show is that, behind this adoration, lies a heart that accepts no limits. And pride is precisely that, the inability to recognize boundaries. Technology is merely the instrument. The spirit that drives it is the same that has always driven humanity's great downfalls. Man seeks to master time, the body, nature, death, and in the midst of this quest loses the notion of what it means to be human. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because there's something fascinating and simultaneously dangerous about this journey of the creature trying to become creator. It's as if humanity is reliving the same story in a new guise. The Tower of Babel fell because humanity believed it could reach heaven through its own merits. Today, humanity believes it can achieve immortality through technology. They've changed the tools, but not the mindset. And this mindset is what Isaiah called spiritual blindness, when humanity sees itself so grandly that it fails to realize how small it is in the face of eternity. We live in an age where humans feel they are in control of the universe. They manipulate genes, recreate images from the past, give voice to machines, and generate entire worlds through artificial intelligence. And all the while, the spirit that inhabits this creation begins to take shape, a spirit of independence, self-sufficiency, and absolute power. Isaiah would probably look at this scenario and say, "You are repeating the same mistake." Because in the eagerness to be creators, humans forget what it means to be creation, and when the creature tries to take the place of the creator, the result is always the same: confusion. The Tower of Babel was the natural consequence of human pride. The confusion of languages was the reflection of a mind that tried to surpass what was permitted. Today, the confusion continues, only in a different form. There has never been so much communication, and yet we have never been so divided. Networks connect, but also separate. Technology brings us closer, but also isolates us. Man believes he has built a tower that leads to heaven, but in reality, he has built a labyrinth made of bytes, of vanity, of voices that speak constantly but rarely say anything true. The spirit of idolatry is the same spirit of self-deification, and that's what makes this prophecy so relevant. Isaiah wasn't just talking about statues. He was describing the cycle of human pride, the cycle that begins with curiosity and ends with the fall. And perhaps the most frightening thing isn't the advancement of technology, but the similarity between the hearts of yesterday and today. Because even with all the accumulated wisdom, man continues to believe he can live without the divine. And it is precisely when he becomes convinced of this that ruin approaches. Pride is silent, yet devastating. It disguises itself as progress, efficiency, and modernity. But deep down, it's just a repetition of the same old temptation. You will be like God. Isaiah saw this spirit in everything man built with the intention of replacing the eternal. And if he were alive today, he might look at the glass skyscrapers, the supercomputers, and the transmission towers and say, "The new Babel is complete." The problem was never progress. It was forgetfulness. Mankind has forgotten that all true wisdom is accompanied by humility, that all power without purpose turns into tyranny, that all creation without conscience breeds destruction. Isaiah understood that pride is the greatest enemy of faith because it makes man believe he can save himself alone. And that is why his words continue to echo like a mirror of the present. The higher man tries to climb, the further he becomes from his own essence. If this excerpt made you think about what really moves the world we live in, write the word in the comments pride. Because it is in this feeling, ancient and disguised as innovation, that the true root of modern idolatry lies hidden. Isaiah saw the beginning, but he wasn't the only one. He was merely the first to light the torch that other prophets would carry centuries later. Daniel, John, and so many others saw fragments of the same picture, visions of a future that, to them, seemed impossible, but which have now become our daily routine. Isaiah called what man would worship as the work of his hands an idol. Daniel called the unprecedented advancement of human knowledge multiplied knowledge. And John, in his vision in Revelation, saw the living image, a creation that would speak and influence the nations. 3 different languages, 3 distinct eras, but a single time described: ours. The time in which man not only creates, but strives to become the creator. These prophecies are not mere coincidences. They form an invisible thread that spans the centuries, connecting the spiritual and the technological, the divine and the human. Isaiah saw humanity filling itself with idols, Daniel saw humanity drowning in knowledge, and John saw humanity guided by a speaking image. And if we look closely, we will see that these three visions complement each other like pieces of a single puzzle. They show the cycle of human pride, the desire to dominate the divine through reason. Daniel, in his book, described a time when knowledge would increase. He wasn't just talking about spiritual wisdom, but about something much greater: a limitless increase in information, a race for knowledge, science, and discovery. Today, we are experiencing exactly that. Never before has humanity had so much access to data, answers, and theories. And, paradoxically, we have never been so confused. Because information grows, but discernment diminishes. Humanity has all the answers in the palm of its hand, but it has lost the ability to ask the right questions. Isaiah is said to have said that this is the price of modern idolatry. When humanity worships what it creates, it forgets its creator. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because if we analyze it closely, we realize that what seemed like a sequence of isolated visions is, in fact, a continuous narrative, a prophetic portrait of the human journey. Isaiah saw the heart of man swelling with pride. Daniel saw the human mind expanding beyond its limits. And John saw the end result: a creation that comes to life, speaks, and demands worship. It is as if all three were describing the phases of the same transformation: the transformation of man into his own God. And the most impressive thing is that all of this was revealed in times when even the concept of technology didn't exist. Isaiah wrote with ink and parchment. Daniel, amid empires and statues. John, exiled on an island, seeing visions that seemed like dreams. None of them could have imagined what a satellite, a computer, a global network, or artificial intelligence were. Yet their words fit perfectly with the scenario we live in today. It's as if they saw not just the future, but the essence of the future, the mindset that would guide it. What Isaiah called an idol, Daniel called knowledge multiplied, and John called a living image. They all saw the same time, the time we live in now, a time where man tries to reach the divine through digital means, believing he can create life, predict destiny, decipher the universe. And yet, what these prophecies show us is that the true danger lies not in advancement, but in intention. What drives man when he creates? Is it the love of wisdom or the desire for power? Is it the search for light or the temptation to replace it? These ancient prophets described not only the future, but the spiritual underbelly of humanity. They saw the invisible impact of progress, the price of unbridled ambition. Daniel spoke of empires that would fall from pride, and John described a civilization fascinated by its own image. Today, we live the sum of these two visions. We have built a society where knowledge is limitless, but the spirit is scarce, where image is everything, but truth is rare. Isaiah, Daniel, and John were messengers from different times, but they all warned of the same hidden truth. Humanity would create something so great that it would eventually kneel before it. There is a mysterious beauty in this convergence. Three men, centuries apart, saw the same horizon, a horizon where the spiritual and the technological intertwine, where human creation reaches the height of its potential, and also its peril. Isaiah saw the danger of idolatry. Daniel saw the confusion of excessive knowledge. John saw the dominance of an image given voice. Together, they describe the birth of a new kind of world, a world where the invisible and the digital merge, and where the divine is replaced by simulation. And if we think about it, everything we experience today is the literal fulfillment of these visions. Humans speak to machines that understand them, connect to artificial minds that learn on their own, and give their time and faith to systems that know them better than they know themselves. It's the idolatry of Isaiah, the multiplication of Daniel, and the living image of John, all happening before our eyes. The ancients knew. They didn't see chips or networks, but they saw the human heart. and that was enough to understand what was to come. Prophecies are not about the end of the world, but about awakening. They show us that the danger was never in technology, but in what it reveals about us. What do we do with the power we have? What do we choose to worship? Where do we place our faith when everything seems controllable? These are the questions Isaiah, Daniel, and John left us, not as riddles, but as mirrors. If this passage made you reflect on how old visions are fulfilled in new ways, write the word in the comments prophets. Because in the end, they didn't see machines. They saw the soul of humanity, and it is in it that all the prophecies truly come true. The truth hidden behind the glow of the screens is that the new idol isn't just worshipped, it also controls. It's the same old pattern, only now disguised as progress, comfort, and freedom. Man believes he's in control, but barely realizes that every decision, every movement, every word spoken online is being watched, stored, and analyzed by something he himself created. Modern technology presents itself as liberating, but is, in fact, the most sophisticated surveillance system ever. Isaiah would have recognized this paradox immediately, because at its core, idolatry has always been about this: handing over power to something that promises salvation but demands control. Humanity today lives under a new form of servitude, but with the appearance of choice. Everything is presented as convenience. Every app is a facilitator, every update a promise of a better life. But at the same time, everything we do is recorded, deciphered, and used to shape behavior. Modern idolatry doesn't require temples or rituals. It infiltrates the background of our daily lives in the small decisions we make without thinking. Accept cookies, allow access, save preferences. These are innocent phrases that open invisible doors. And the more people believe they are free, the more deeply they are programmed. This is the great irony of digital freedom. It gives the feeling of autonomy, but traps the individual in a system that knows them better than they know themselves. Modern man thinks he chooses what he sees, but in reality, he only sees what the system wants him to see. He believes he speaks freely, but his words are filtered, measured, and classified. And it is thus, subtly and almost imperceptibly, that the new idol becomes not only an object of worship, but of obedience. Isaiah warned that idols had eyes but did not see, ears but did not hear. Today, it is the opposite. The modern idol sees all, hears all, and stores all. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because what's at stake isn't just privacy. It's the essence of human freedom. What does it mean to be free when your every move can be predicted by a machine? When your emotions can be manipulated by a sequence of data? Technology, the very thing that promised to free humans from limitations, now becomes the invisible cage that imprisons them. And the scariest thing is that it does so with people's voluntary consent. No one is forced. Everyone participates willingly. It's the modern cult of convenience. Ancient prophecies spoke of a brand that would allow buying and selling, of a system in which everyone would be identified and dependent on a global structure. Today, this no longer sounds far-fetched. The total digitalization of life, from money to emotions, creates an environment in which control becomes natural. It's no longer necessary to impose. It's enough to offer. The temptation of comfort is more effective than any coercion. And that's why Isaiah, if he lived today, probably wouldn't speak of statues, but of systems. He would say, "Men have filled themselves with idols, and idols now observe them." The hidden truth is that this technological dependence has created a new form of worship, not religious, but existential. Humans no longer consult oracles, but virtual assistants. They no longer seek inspiration from prophets, but from algorithms. They surrender their doubts, their desires, their secrets, and in return receive quick, personalized answers. It seems like a miracle, but it is a transaction. And, like every spiritual transaction, there is a price. The price is inner freedom. the ability to think for oneself, to decide without influence, to feel without mediation. This new idol is different from the old ones because he speaks. He answers, gives opinions, advises. He becomes a companion, a guide, a confidant. And that's precisely what makes him dangerous. He doesn't impose control through force, but through seduction. He convinces people that they are at the center of everything, when in reality they are just another number in a vast global database. The number, in fact, is the foundation of this entire system. Each person becomes a sequence, a digital identity, a line of code. The promise of security and convenience hides a tracking system so profound that if Isaiah could see it, he might call it the invisible mark. What was once merely a prophetic metaphor is now literal. Control disguises itself as freedom, and man becomes a servant without realizing it. It's a transformation of mentality that happens silently, and that's precisely why it's so dangerous. Modern idolatry doesn't require anyone to abandon their faith. It merely distracts. It distracts with speed, with stimulation, with immediate pleasure. And while man is distracted, the system grows stronger. When Isaiah spoke of worshiping the work of one's own hands, perhaps he never imagined that one day this work would have the power to observe every human gesture. But that's exactly what happened. The new idol is no longer in temples, it's in pockets, in homes, in thoughts. And it no longer needs prayers, only attention. Because in the digital age, attention is worship, and the world is kneeling before the glow of screens, believing it lives in the height of freedom, when in truth it has already handed over the keys to its own soul. The prophecy has always been about this, about the moment when humanity would believe itself in control, but in reality would be controlled by what it created. What seemed impossible to Isaiah is reality for us. An entire civilization guided by something that has no face but knows everyone's face. And in the silence of this new form of faith, humanity forgets the voice that truly matters, the one that comes from within, not from machines. If this excerpt made you reflect on what freedom really is in a world dominated by systems, write the word in the comments conscience. Because perhaps it is the last territory where we can still be truly free. Prophecy never came to condemn human advancement. It came to awaken consciousness. The problem was never creating. After all, God Himself placed within us the desire to build, to imagine, to give form to the invisible. Man was made to create, but not to worship what he creates. And it is precisely this subtle line that separates progress from perdition. When creation replaces the Creator, the brilliance of innovation turns into spiritual blindness. Isaiah didn't want to limit humanity. He wanted to remind it of something essential. God did not forbid man to create, but warned him never to forget who gives breath to creation. This phrase is the heart of all reflection, because breath is what distinguishes what is alive from what merely functions. Man can generate movement, can build complex systems, can give voice to machines, but he cannot give them a soul. And yet he tries. This incessant attempt to create life outside the source of life is what leads man astray. Technology in itself is neutral. What makes it divine or destructive is the spirit that moves it. When man creates to serve, it liberates. When he creates to dominate, it enslaves. There comes a point when advancement ceases to be a blessing and becomes a prison, and it is at this point that spiritual discernment becomes more necessary than ever. Discernment means seeing beyond the glitter. It means perceiving what lies behind the promises of power, ease, and control. It means understanding that true progress is that which brings man closer to his essence, not that which transforms him into an extension of a machine. Isaiah spoke of a people who no longer looked upward, and perhaps this best describes humanity today, a people with eyes always fixed on screens but rarely on the sky. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because there is something profoundly human and divine in the act of creation, and therein lies the danger and beauty of this era. God created man in his image and gave him the ability to reflect that image in the world. Creating, therefore, is a reflection of divine nature itself. But when man tries to detach himself from this origin, he begins to create in his own image, and that's where the meaning becomes distorted. Creation begins to serve the ego, not the spirit. Technology ceases to be a tool and becomes a throne. And at the center of this throne stands man himself, admiring his work, forgetting who inspired him to make it. Faith, in this context, is not a refuge, it is a beacon. It does not deny progress, but gives it direction. True wisdom lies in maintaining a balance between the power to create and the humility to recognize the origin of life. Spiritual discernment is the antidote to modern idolatry, because it allows us to see the purpose behind things. Not all light illuminates, some only distract. Not all progress elevates, some only distorts the path. Faith is what keeps our vision clear when everything around us shines too brightly. If Isaiah could speak to us today, he might say something like, "You are touching the heavens with your hands, but forgetting who made them." This is the essence of the call to conscience. Prophecy is not a warning of destruction, but an invitation to remember where we came from, to remember what moves us, to remember who breathes the breath of life. And this breath is something no machine can reproduce. It is the spark that differentiates the code of the soul, the calculation of compassion, the algorithm of empathy. Humanity's technological journey is fascinating, but it also demands vigilance, because the same power that creates can corrupt, the same instrument that liberates can imprison, and the same knowledge that illuminates can become idolatry if the heart is not awakened. Faith is not the enemy of reason. It is the foundation that prevents reason from turning into arrogance. When Isaiah warned about idols, he wasn't just talking about wood or stone. He was talking about the human heart, which has the power to transform anything into a god. The greatest challenge of our time is not understanding technology, but understanding what it is doing to us. Modern idolatry is not a matter of belief, but of focus. Everything that occupies the center of our attention becomes an object of worship. And if we dedicate more time to screens than to silence, more faith in the system than in our soul, we are already worshiping something, even without realizing it. The call to consciousness is, therefore, a call to balance, to use without being used, to create without losing ourselves, to evolve without forgetting. What ancient prophecies try to remind us is that true transformation doesn't come from outside, it comes from within. It's the awakening of the spirit amidst the confusion of artificial light. Isaiah spoke to a people who had exchanged the gold of faith for the glitter of deception. And today, in a way, we do the same, only with circuits, data, and connections. Humanity has created networks that cover the world, but has distanced itself from the thread that connects it to the divine. Ultimately, this whole story isn't about technology. It's about direction, about where we're headed while we believe we're progressing. Isaiah saw a future where man would reach for the infinite with his own hands, and perhaps that future has arrived. The question is, what will we do with it? If this passage touched you and made you reflect on what really gives meaning to creation, write the word in the comments breath. Because it is He, the invisible breath of life, that reminds us that, even in the midst of technology, there is still something in us that no machine can replicate. Isaiah saw the beginning. John saw the end. And we are living in the middle. A time when prophecies have ceased to be just ancient words and become a reflection of our daily lives. Everything that once seemed distant, symbolic, or impossible is now before us, on screens, in machines, in the invisible decisions that silently shape the world. What the prophets called visions, we call technology. What they saw as spiritual signs, we now see as scientific advances. But deep down, it's the same story, the same plot, just told in a different language. With each new step humanity takes toward the future, the ancient words echo more powerfully. Isaiah warned that man would worship the work of his hands, and that is exactly what we are experiencing. We have created systems so powerful that we now depend on them for our very existence. John saw a living image that would have power over nations, and today this image is present on every screen, on every device, influencing thoughts, behaviors, and beliefs. You don't need to believe in prophecies to realize something profound is happening. But this isn't a message of fear. It's a call to conscience. The prophecies weren't written to scare us, but to remind us of who we are and what truly matters. They are a mirror, and when we look into it, we see how far humanity has come, but also how far it has strayed from what makes it human. The problem isn't progress, but forgetfulness. When humanity forgets who gives creation its breath, it turns a blessing into a trap. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because there's something powerful in realizing that we're right at the point where history is being fulfilled. It's not coincidence, it's purpose. Prophecies don't belong to the past. They breathe in the present and invite us to choose between distraction and awakening, between worshiping what we've created or remembering who created us. If this message made you think, write the word in the comments now. Because the future that Isaiah saw and John described is no longer just around the corner. It has already begun, and it is happening before our eyes. If you've made it this far, perhaps you felt the same way I have, that these ancient words still have something to tell us, that even amidst so much technology, speed, and information, there's still a silent call to remember what truly matters. And that's why this space exists, to reflect together, to understand the signs, and to look at the present with the eyes of the Spirit. If this content resonated with you in any way, please leave a like, not just to support the channel, but to show that this kind of reflection still has value in a fast-paced world. And if you believe this kind of message needs to continue being shared, subscribe here and activate the bell. This way, you'll be part of this journey, and each new video will reach you as a new chapter in this story we're living together. Also, write the phrase in the comments, "I made it to the end," just so I know you've walked with me this far. It's a simple but powerful way to show that there are still people willing to think deeper, to feel deeper, to see beyond the surface. And if you want to continue this conversation, there's a video right here that complements this topic. It delves even deeper into everything we talked about today. Click through and stay with me there, because ultimately, understanding what's happening now is the first step to seeing what's yet to come.